right, what's up, guys? We should be starting up now. Hello and welcome to another day in the NBA and another Live Before Lock show here for Awesemo.com. Of course, on the Awesemo YouTube channel, which you should be subscribed to and hit the notification bell so you can see all of our content coming up. I'm Chris Spags, joined by a man I don't get to do enough shows with, but one of the smartest men in the DFS industry who you can follow at ShipMyMoneyDFS. He's Adam Scherer. How you doing, Adam?
Doing good. Always enjoy doing shows with you. Nice change of pace.
Yeah, getting a little bit of action here for the NBA, all the best and brightest here on our Live Before Lock show. So make sure you watch all the things. Adam was just doing a show with Lofty for MLB earlier. We're all jumping from sport to sport, but trying to make sure you have the best content you can. And of course, one way to get more of that content in your life is to go to Awesemo.com/join. No promo codes for the NBA right now, but there is one for the NHL. And as Awesemo mentioned yesterday in our MLB Live Before Lock show, lots of stacking on there that's going to be similar to the MLB. So I've been playing that. Play some NHL with our boy Jake Hari, Slim Cliffy, and Jake today doing a nice strategy show for the NHL bubble. But take advantage of the promo code NHL is back at Awesemo.com/join. They'll give you half off your first month of an NHL package. And again, that really is one that I feel like has been undervalued by us and some of the players out there. Again, if you're playing a lot of DFS slates, if you've been jumping between all the sports out there during quarantine, play some NHL. Use the promo code NHL is back for 50% off that first month at Awesemo.com/join. And we do have some free premium content today as well. So make sure to check out all the stuff on the site. NBA ownership projections, which are going to be crucial today. They're crucial every day, but today with some of the chalk we'll talk about through this next hour, going to be even more crucial for you. MLB player projections, as well as the PGA lineup builder. So there's a lot of free premium content today. If you're afraid to dive your toes into the water, I don't think you dive your toes, afraid to dip your toes in the water into the Awesemo Plus membership, check out the free stuff we have over there. And the last plug, of course, the best plug goes to SuperDraft.io. Or SuperDraft in the App Store, but they're SuperDraft. They sponsor a lot of our content, basically all of our content here on this YouTube channel. You should be playing there every day and playing their game mode style over there called Multiplier, where you say goodbye to salary restrictions and a load of pure lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge to draft any player you want and build your own dream team with countless lineup possibilities to let you experience daily fantasy sports the way that you want. Check out all their contests for NBA, MLB, PGA, NASCAR, MMA. You can enjoy the best of DFS all year round, especially in this bubble life of ours. So sign up for SuperDraft today using the promo code Awesemo10. That's AWESEMO10 for $10 free on your first deposit of $10 or more, and $20 free if you deposit more than $100. And that money hits your account right away, so you can play it in tournaments immediately. And if you win it, it's yours. So go check that out at SuperDraft.io or by downloading SuperDraft in the App Store. Because SuperDraft, there are no limits, more winning. All right, Adam, let's get into the slate here. We got some ownership projections that came through just a few minutes ago, and it does seem like there's one chalk play up top that we should hit on. Actually, well, a couple chalk plays we should hit on now. The chalk play of the day now seems like it'll be Jarrett Allen. Maybe you might have thought it would be one of the value plays for some injured players out there, but Jarrett Allen getting back in there after an official rest day. I guess Karis LeVert and Joe Harris for the Nets reportedly a little bit banged up. They weren't on an official rest day, though, on the front end of the back-to-back, though it does seem just mostly rest for these guys. But Adam, how are you feeling here about Jarrett Allen at 50% of the field almost being on him? A nice price point. The minutes have been there for him. There isn't another big really to go to. We saw Rodion Kurucs start without Allen yesterday. So Jarrett Allen as chalk, is that a player you're willing to take?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. You know, the salary really hasn't come up. He's really inexpensive. You're getting big minutes from him, basically as many as he can play, barring foul trouble or injury. There's no true backup center on this team. Like you said, you've had Kurucs being the backup center. It's just a spot where he's always been a good producer on a per minute basis. It's just that for most of the regular season, he was splitting minutes with DeAndre Jordan. So, he had a lot more risk. There's foul trouble. There's DeAndre Jordan playing well and keeping him off the floor. It's easier for the Nets to just bench him if he's playing poorly, and you have DeAndre Jordan. Now you don't have any of those issues except for potential foul trouble, but it's really hard for me to get away from Allen.
Yeah, Allen going to be highly owned, does tend to be a player who's able to spike an upside. Target score for him probably in the high 30s on DraftKings, and definitely seems within range for him, especially going against the Boston team who did plan a back-to-back as well. And their guys actually played yesterday, unlike some of these Nets. I guess while we're talking about the Nets, Adam, I want to hear your thoughts on some of these other guys because Karis LeVert's been a usage monster. Joe Harris also getting a little bit more, though, with his price on the rise. I don't see getting to him. But do you have any value in the rest of these Nets guys, with some of them still priced up for there being nobody in the lineup yesterday?
Not too much else here. I mean, Karis LeVert, I still want to go back to, has a 34% usage rate through the 2 games that he has played in Orlando. And without Dinwiddie or Irving, obviously, he's taking on the primary scoring role. The assist numbers go up for him as well. You know, not a true ball handler in the sense that someone like Irving or Dinwiddie is, but they don't really have a true point guard on this team. Like the other guys are Tyler Johnson and Chris Chiozza. So you're still having LeVert look to make plays, which increases the assist percentage. He's playing big minutes when he plays. So I do still like LeVert. The salary is just not quite as affordable as it is for Jared Allen.
And it's also worth noting, LeVert does seem like he's due for some positive regression in terms of assists. His assist rate's dropped off a little bit, but it does seem like the expected assists have been there for him. And the usage rate about in the mid-30s pretty much every time he's on the floor. So LeVert can be an interesting tournament play today. Definitely looks, to me, a little bit higher price than you'd like, but still definitely more willing to pay his price than Joe Harris's. Let's get through some of the rest of the chalk here. And one play in particular who looks like he'll be pretty highly owned is Jason Tatum. Over the course of the season, we've seen Tatum's usage rate jump up the most out of all the Celtics when Kemba Walker is unavailable. He is unavailable today. It is a rest day for him after he went in that back-to-back, or the front end of the back-to-back yesterday. And now Tatum going to be very chalky today at a price point that I think gives him some room to do some more here. I really don't mind Tatum, though. It's worth noting our boy Josh, the Chubster, had Jason Tatum as his bust of the day in the NBA syllabus, which you get as part of that premium membership at Awesemo.com. So maybe Josh sees something in Tatum that he doesn't like. But Adam, how do you feel about Tatum here representing Boston in a lineup that should have some usage to go around with no Kemba?
Nothing makes me feel better about a play than disagreeing with Josh. Yeah, I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't like Tatum here. You know, he plays big minutes. We haven't gotten any word that Boston plans on limiting the guys that are playing today. We've only gotten word that Kemba's not playing. It's a nice matchup against Brooklyn's, second unit essentially. And Tatum in the games that he's played, we have a pretty decent sample. I think it's 12 games of games that Kemba has sat this year where all of Tatum, Hayward, and Jaylen Brown have played. Tatum has a 30.1% usage rate in those games. You're typically getting 34 to 36 minutes from him as long as the game's competitive. And if the game's not competitive, there's a really good chance that Jason Tatum's the reason why. So I think all of that stuff looks great. I don't have any issue with him at an $8,200 price tag. Definitely one of my favorite plays on the day.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Tatum is a guy I'm going to be, it's going to be hard to get over the field with him, given the fact he's going to be about 40% ownership projected by us at Awesemo.com so far. We'll see if that goes up a little bit throughout the course of this hour. And again, lock today is at 2:30 Eastern time, 11:30 Pacific time. So keep that in mind as you're building your lineups today. Obviously, we're on here. We do an hour show. But yeah, Tatum I'm with. And I'm also intrigued by Jaylen Brown. He's popping up for me quite a bit. He's looked really good in the bubble, which kind of scares me because that's driven up his price. But Brown's also gained a pretty big boost, and he's been rebounding pretty well. I feel like I would prefer him over Gordon Hayward, though I guess Hayward's going to be less owned, it looks like. So maybe there's some value in going there. But are you with Jaylen Brown as a chalky option, but certainly not as chalky as Jason Tatum?
Yeah, I think, I prefer Tatum. And between Brown and Hayward, who you mentioned, a $200 price difference on DraftKings, I have them projected almost identically. But in those games that all three of these guys have been healthy without Kemba, Jaylen does have the second highest usage rate at 26.8%. Just like Tatum, you expect big minutes from him. I like getting there. And if there is going to be a big ownership difference between him and Hayward, that's certainly a spot you can look to pivot in some lineups. But I think Jaylen does have a little bit higher ceiling.
Yeah, I would agree there. And, it's worth noting Hayward does gain some on assists as well. And, I think that there's going to be some opportunity for Hayward to be a tournament player that can spike an upside. But in terms of feeling safe, I do feel like Tatum and Brown to be the guys I feel the most comfortable with. And, Hayward, certainly a tournament play is worth some exposure. He's going to be the lowest owned of the trio. And, we know he can spike an upside and in a way that can draw away from Tatum and Brown as well. So I think if you're not playing Tatum or Brown or Tatum and Brown, might not be the worst move to get Hayward in there in the hopes that he takes advantage of a Nets defense that's looked pretty terrible to start the season or start the bubble so far. Brad Wanamaker, Adam, is he rating for you at all? Because that's been the play we all know and love whenever Kemba's out, and he's at stone minimum prices today industry-wide.
Yeah, I mean, at 3K, if you're playing 150 lineups, it's someone you should be taking a shot on just because there is uncertainty of how this rotation will go. But at the same time, we've seen this happen a lot this season, and Wanamaker's really never gotten the run that everyone thinks he's going to when all of Smart, Brown, Hayward, and Tatum are available to play. Typically, you've seen all four of those guys start with Daniel Tice at center, and Wanamaker basically plays backup minutes. So I have him in for 24 minutes. There's certainly different ways this game can break where he gets more. But based on what we've seen Brad Stevens do this season, I don't really have any reason to be going and projecting Wanamaker for 30 minutes or something like that. He's not going to be a high usage guy. He's going to be on the floor with Tatum and Hayward and Brown or at least some combination of that group when he's out there, because Brad Stevens does typically stagger minutes as well. So it's it's someone that obviously you can use in stars and scrubs builds because he does have a path to being good, but I'm not projecting him to be a great play. I have him in for about 18 points, which, at 3K, some people consider good. I don't in tournaments because it still costs you a roster spot. You still usually need at least 25 to 30 points from everyone to win a tournament.
Yeah, certainly some risk with Wanamaker, but minimum price if he makes a lineup work, I think maybe worth a little bit of exposure. But the 11% that we have projected for him, and again, you get all these ownership projections at awesemo.com/join if you want to see all these guys, the Celtics. And again, they'll change as we get closer to lock and get a little more accurate. But Wanamaker 11%, I feel like that's more than fair. And I agree, the ceiling there, not the highest, but the target score also not the highest. So maybe that does help Wanamaker accomplish something today against the Nets team, who honestly could get blown off the floor too, though we worried about that yesterday and it didn't quite happen against Milwaukee. Let's keep going through here. And again, we are checking out the YouTube chat. Some people in there, I guess, not happy we're not answering them directly. We talk about the main points of the slate, and then we go and answer some questions. And I'm always keeping an eye on all the chats, so have no fear. But also, if you're having issues watching on YouTube, apparently there's some outage issues there, maybe related to the weather on the East Coast, who knows. But check it out on Twitch or Periscope if you're having these issues, because no lag over there, and it seems like it's fine for me. But just try some of the other platforms if YouTube isn't working out for you, and keep the chat open so you can see everything those guys are saying. Let's talk about another play that's opened up by some of the value on the slate, Adam, or some of the entries rather on the slate who should open up some value. Said that completely backwards. Brendan Clark going against Utah. I honestly thought he would be higher owned. We've got him at 25% right now on DraftKings. I really thought he would be the one that people flock to, given that he's been a pretty productive per minute guy on the year. And Jaren Jackson is out for the rest of the season with a knee injury. But Clark starting here, he does take some downticks and rebounding and usage when playing alongside Jonas Valanciunas. But I guess you could see him play some backup 5 minutes as well. It's possible he gets into the 30s of minutes here. How are you feeling about Brandon Clark? Is he a guy you're going to be with the field or above the field on? Because I'm personally just surprised at 25%, and I was moving away from him because of that, but assuming that he was going to get higher. But if he's at 25, I feel like that's actually a little lower than I would think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with everything you said there, because he does lose usage playing with the starters. He does lose rebounding opportunities playing next to Jonas Valanciunas, but his salary is cheap enough where that's made up for by the path to more minutes. Even if you assume that he doesn't play backup center now and that those minutes, go to like Gorgie, go to Jang or someone, you're still probably getting around 30 minutes of, 0.9 fantasy points per minute from him, which at $4,600 is a really good projection. So I think Clark is someone that is going a little bit lower owned than he probably should, even at 25%.
Yeah, I just think that's pretty much how I'd feel about it, is that he's cheap. He's usually the guy that people flock to for whatever reason. They're not yet, but we'll see as the ownership updates closer to lock, and maybe that'll change. Maybe he'll get a little higher. But Clark at 25%, I think, is still a good play. Clark at 50%, I think, is maybe where you'd even consider, like Adam mentioned, Gorgie Dang, maybe go to Anthony Tolliver even, who has been getting those backup 4 minutes, or at least, just not play Clark, I think, even if Tolliver.
Please do not go to Anthony Tolliver.
I think, it's just a theoretical play, but yeah, it is Anthony Tolliver. But he got signed for the rest of the bubble, Adam. So maybe he's got that new minimum contract money that's burning a hole in his pocket. He's trying to show big. Who knows? Any interest in the other Grizzlies because of Jackson not being out there? I mean, that is a pretty big usage rate going out. Jonas Valanciunas has theoretically had some success against Gobert in the past. I think, maybe not as much as you'd like to see, but should be close to the rim, which is going to be beneficial for Jonas. And, again, just gaining a little bit of upside, or at least maybe a little more minutes too, without Jackson in the mix. So is he a play you'd go to at kind of an awkward price point that it seems like people won't be playing?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think it's like an optimal play, so it should keep ownership down. But Jackson being out does, at the very least, increase Valanciunas' ceiling in a couple of ways, because for one, it's easier for him to stay on the floor if he's playing well. You don't have the same impetus to get minutes to Gorgie Jang as you do to get minutes to Brandon Clark and Jaren Jackson, given that they are two of your younger players that you're looking to get minutes for. So if Valanciunas is playing well, it's less likely that he just loses minutes to his backup. And then on top of that, Jackson being replaced by Clark is less usage in that starting unit. So you get a little bit of an uptick there for Valanciunas. So I do think that his ceiling's a little bit higher. It's also not a matchup with Gobert that I'm particularly concerned about. You're more concerned with Gobert when guys, rely on scoring at the rim. Valanciunas is perfectly capable of pulling Gobert away from the basket and knocking down some shots. So the matchup's not too scary. I think the biggest or the hardest thing will be roster construction. We already talked about Jared Allen at $2,000 less on DraftKings at center. So, and then you have Embiid, you have Jokic on the slate. The opportunity cost obviously is pretty high at the position, but that should keep his ownership in check. And he's someone that averages well over a fantasy point per minute.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly some contrarian value in Jonas Valanciunas whenever he's going to be under 10% owned, and that's the case today. It does seem like we have him at about just 5% or a little bit over 5% right now. And Jonas can spike that upside. And again, just being close to the rim or being able, as Adam mentioned, be able to flex Rudy Gobert out, make him uncomfortable. I really think it could be a good match for Jonas and at least worth getting close to the field on in the hopes that maybe he picks up that upside and Clark doesn't. Another guy on the Grizzlies who I think it's worth hitting on, who was very chalky the other day, and he's priced up now, but Ja Morant been shooting a ton, really shot terribly in that game against New Orleans, which disappointed a lot of people. And one of the steadfast DFS principles over the years is going back to a guy who just disappointed about half the field the game before, but the role's still there, the opportunity's still there. But I think Memphis needs this win even more now because they're in danger of not even making the play-in games. But how are you feeling about Ja Morant with his price up? Is it time to go back to him, or is the price now high enough that you're not willing to absorb that risk?
It's high enough where I don't think he'll be in 60% of my lineups or whatever it was again. But I don't think he's overpriced, because the thing to keep in mind is that he was super popular last slate because he was underpriced. So his salary coming up doesn't mean that now he's overpriced. He's still playing huge minutes. He's another guy benefiting from his backup being injured. Tyus Jones not being active means that there's really no one forcing Morant to the bench, and he's playing as many minutes as he can. You're seeing 36 plus minutes from Morant, whereas earlier in the year you were seeing 32, 33. He gets a little bit of a usage bump without Jaren Jackson as well. He should lead the team in usage, assuming Dillon Brooks decides to give up the ball once in a while. I think going back to Morant is a good play. It's just that you're not going to get to as much as you did last slate because the salary has come up enough.
Yeah, I think that's about right. And Dillon Brooks, my least favorite player in the league. I guess after yesterday might be Bogdanovich, but Dillon Brooks, 40% usage on, or 40% shooting on the year, and he just keeps chucking up shots. At a certain point, maybe try something else. Go to the rim. Don't just shoot a mid-ranger over and over. Yeah,
he's one of the guys that I roster a ton in DFS because normally he's not popular and because he thinks he's really good. But he's not. He shouldn't shoot nearly as much as he does. And today in particular, I don't think I'll be getting to a lot of him. The upside is still there. He's a natural pivot off of someone like Evan Fournier, who should get ownership for Orlando at that price point. The upside is there just because Dillon Brooks will shoot, but I still would put him behind Morant, Valanciunas, and Clark as far as Grizzlies that I'm looking to get to.
Yeah, I think that's where I would land with that too. And, certainly some opportunity for these Grizzlies today. Again, just losing a big guy in the lineup who's been putting up usage, putting up rebounds, and is a key part in terms of the minutes load as well. Can open up some opportunity here, but we'll see how that looks for everybody else here. Any Kyle Anderson, I guess, while we're talking about these sort of flotsam Grizzlies guys, because he is somebody you could pick up a little more minutes at a price that offers some theoretical upside, though it is Kyle Anderson, so who knows? But I didn't get there, but I just feel like I need to ask for the sake of completion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the good thing about Anderson is that he is getting some backup point minutes. He's been subbing in behind Morant. The bad thing about Kyle Anderson is that he's Kyle Anderson. You can get a little bit more in the way of assist opportunities, but he's still probably going to have the fifth highest usage rate out of the starters. He's still not playing huge minutes. It's not like he's 3,500 or something like that. So, someone that if he's going to be really, really low owned, I might end up with a little bit more than in 150 lineups, like, 5% to 2% or something, but definitely not a building block for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And Kyle Anderson probably should never be a building block, as we've seen countless times when he has risen to chalk status over the years. So we talked about some of the higher owned plays, and there are a couple more that we'll touch on as we go here. But first, hit that like button, because I have a big secret team here that I want to hit on who's not going to be owned at all. And I won't even talk about them if we don't get another 700 likes. I don't know. I don't know what the benchmark is supposed to be. If we get to 7,000 likes, I'll give you guys my secret team. Now, just hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch and helps us get seen by more people for these shows, which we need now more than ever in this bubble time. Adam, I want to hear your thoughts on Philadelphia, because any team looks good going against Washington, which is, I think, one of the issues. And also, Washington is not a great team, as we know, and Philadelphia can occasionally lay it down on an opponent in a way that can lead to a blowout. That we don't predict blowouts here. And I think the example yesterday of the Nets-Bucks game is a good reason why. Probably the best example of not predicting blowouts we've ever seen. But this Philly team, I don't get why they're under 10% owned. Ben Simmons is popping up for me a bunch. I also think he's going to get some more usage back his way, with Tobias Harris seemingly benefiting quite a lot from Simmons at the 4. His usage rate's been around 30% in the bubble game so far, but this seems to me like Simmons can't do that forever. And Embiid as well is under 10%, with a lot of people flocking to the cheaper Jared Allen, people flocking to Even Jakob Poeltl, though I guess his ownership has come down a bit, but Vooch, Jokic splitting that center ownership. So I really like both these guys, and I honestly don't mind playing in the same lineup if I could get enough value in there. But for me, Simmons is a priority today. How are you feeling about him? And I guess also Embiid while we're talking Sixers.
Yeah, I love both of them. They both should do really well in this matchup in particular. Washington, on top of being a bad defensive team that plays fast, they have a terrible defensive center in Thomas Bryant, who should play big minutes as long as he stays out of foul trouble. And Embiid should be able to just absolutely abuse him. Behind him, you have Mo Wagner, who can get under guys' skin. He can pick up some offensive fouls, but he's still not going to do much to slow down Embiid, I wouldn't think. And then on top of that, the Wizards are also a terrible defense in transition, which is where Ben Simmons does a lot of damage. So I think it's a really good spot for both of them. Simmons it's kind of interesting because, obviously he's not running point as much anymore. So it's easy to look at his assist numbers in Orlando and say that, that's what it's going to be going forward. But he's also run pretty bad on assists. He leads the team with 11.5 potential assists per game. He's only picked up 4.5 assists per game. If you compare his potential assists to earlier in the season, he's averaging 17.8 potential assists per 48 minutes in Orlando. Prior to Orlando, he was averaging 22.5 potential assists per 48 minutes. So his assist opportunities are down a little bit, but they're not down as much as his assist numbers would suggest. So I still think he's the same well-rounded, rebounding, scoring, and assisting player that you were getting earlier in the year. And he does play really big minutes in competitive games.
Yeah, I just think Simmons to me is one of these guys who, we have a lot of chalk players on the slate. One other at point guard who disappointed me a bit lately, we'll talk about next. But, Simmons under 10%, always an option for tournaments to me. And I just think he's due for better days than we've seen so far. And, people, I think, a little too concerned about the move to the 4. Like, it sucks he doesn't have the ball in his hands as much. But, yeah, I agree. Like, I noticed the assist numbers as well and was like, this is going to get better for him. I think the usage, too. Like, he's going to get easy looks in this matchup that he didn't get in that last Spurs game. So to me, I think Ben Simmons is one of my guys I'm definitely heavily above the field on today. And we have him projected for under 10%. So hard to argue anything there. Anybody else on the Sixers that you're getting here? Because I see Josh Richardson as being a decent value. And you can make an argument for Tobias Harris too, though I think the fact that he's now priced where Ben Simmons is makes me want Simmons a lot more. But Harris has been shooting a ton. And as I mentioned, the usage rate about 30% in the bubble. So you're getting these other Sixers or even Al Horford if you feel real feisty?
No, not really. I mean, anybody playing big minutes against the Wizards is in tournament consideration, but the rest of the team relative to their pricing looks a lot worse to me than Simmons and Embiid do.
People in the YouTube chat asking who you would run it back for Washington, and great transition by you guys. So thank you for helping produce the show almost as well as our guy Jordan Klein behind the glass, so we always appreciate. But still, a question here about the Wizards. Is there anybody you're interested in? Because to me, it sort of starts and ends with Troy Brown, but I keep getting roped into a little bit of Ish Smith and Shabazz Napier. I've missed the boat on Thomas Bryant. His price is up high enough where I don't see getting there. But if you had to run it back with one of the Wizards, or, not that you have to, but if you were inclined to run it back with one of the Wizards, Adam, which one would you want to go to? And why would it be Troy Brown?
Yeah, I mean, I think that so it's an interesting point because if you're playing Embiid or Simmons, I don't care about running it back. If you're playing both of them, then you probably would want to. But the problem you're going to run into is, at least looking at DraftKings pricing, there's nobody that really stands out in Washington. So you're making a suboptimal play in terms of points per dollar, at least. I think that Troy Brown would be the most favorable guy because he's going to do a little bit of everything. But it's pretty tough to predict game to game who's going to lead this team in usage. It really can be any of Bryant, Brown, Rui, Smith, Napier. It's going to vary. And all of their prices are pretty much where they should be. So if you're playing both of them, both Simmons and Embiid, then take some shots on Brown, take some shots on Rui. Hope that they're the guys that keep Washington in the game. But if you're just playing one of them, I wouldn't worry about running it back.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I want to dig a little deeper on Troy Brown for you. Let's call it a deeper dive, if we will, about Troy Brown. But assist rate for him has jumped up. He's been about 25% in the bubble. And you look at the stat lines. Last game, he had some foul trouble, so he missed some minutes there. But was on the cusp of a triple-double after being on the cusp of a triple-double the game before. Philadelphia, not a great defensive matchup by any stretch, but I feel like Troy Brown at his price point, like he's one of these guys in that 5,000 to 6,000 range on DraftKings that I feel like has actually the upside to get there, and might be a bit clouded by him putting up that 50 fantasy points the other day. But are you not as into Troy Brown today? Because I feel like you've been one of the guys, if I'm remembering correctly for some of our other shows, you've been on Troy recently, right? But you're not getting there quite as much today.
Yeah, I mean, I love Troy Brown just because, or for a couple of reasons. Like, he's a young, former first round pick for the Wizards, so they have incentive to play him a bunch of minutes. He does a little bit of everything. Like, he's not going to go out and have a 30% usage rate, but he rebounds. He scores enough. He picks up assists. The pick and rolls actually look pretty good with him and Thomas Bryant. The problem that I run into is just this price tag has come up, and that, I still think that there's some meat on the bone, but it's not the same as when he was 4,500 and I was just jamming him into every lineup.
Yeah, that's fair. And you're certainly, if he does let you down today, or if he does let me down today in particular, it's going to be a little bit tough for him to dig out of the $5,500 price tag on DraftKings. But I see the opportunity there. And if you adjust his rates in the bubble, it does seem like he's maybe a little better play. And hopefully you can spike that upside today in Philadelphia. Anybody else on Washington jumping out for you? I feel like we should talk about Thomas Bryant just because people see the game logs and wonder why we're not bullish on Thomas Bryant. But that price tag coming up is just not the move for me. And the big risk of foul trouble, I mean, we just saw it with Pirtle. Pirtle happened to get to 25 minutes, but still lost a lot of minutes in that first half because of fouls. Is Bryant somebody you're getting any of, or do you want to at least be with the field on him? Because projection-wise, I don't know that I see it too much today.
Yeah, I think it's tough for me to get to him. The upside is still there because he's a good per minute producer. But like we mentioned earlier, really deep center position. You saw him only play about 29 minutes on the second half of the back-to-back last game. So there is some potential with it being a 3 and 4 that maybe he plays around 30 minutes again. There's also obviously plenty of downside risk with Embiid just posting him up all game and getting in foul trouble. So there's a lot working against him potentially, and the salary is rising at the same time. So, if I'm looking for a relatively low owned center that has a really high ceiling, I'd rather, I think, find the, $600 or whatever it is for Valanciunas.
And Thomas Bryant might be the best play on SuperDraft today, or might be the best site to play him on today. His price is not taking quite as much of a jump there. 1.65x multiplier on SuperDraft. Troy Brown as well, getting a 1.8x multiplier on there. SuperDraft a little bit lower, or a little bit slower on the rising prices and lowering multipliers relative to their, compared to the salaries on other sites. So it's worth playing on there if you want to get some exposure to those guys in particular. And make sure you're taking advantage with the promo code Awesemo10, AWESEMO10. Gets you $10 free with $10 of a deposit and $20 if you deposit more than $100 on SuperDraft. So play over there. Honestly, they've had a ton of overlay, but also there are some guys here who just make a lot more sense than they do on other sites. And Thomas Bryant, to me, would be one of those guys. We're going to keep going here, guys. So hit the like button. And hopefully, again, if you're having YouTube issues, check out Periscope, check out Twitch. It might be like a DNS issue with YouTube is what I would guess based upon what we're hearing. Smart TVs too. I know I had an issue, but didn't have one on my laptop when watching our shows earlier. So, try some different ways to watch, but we're sorry about that. It's not on our end as far as we know. San Antonio is another team we have to hit on here because DeJounte Murray is going to be chalky again. And Murray's a guy I do tend to had a lot of him the other day. He was fine, but DeMar DeRozan was the one who soaked up that usage. Murray couldn't really find a shot. I think he was 4 for 14 or something like that. DeRozan went off there. Derek White kind of went down along with that. Murray and White tend to negatively correlate with DeRozan when he has these outlier days. But Murray today is chalk. He's at a reasonable price against Denver. He's also been pretty good against Denver for people who like to watch the matchups. But where are you with DeJounte Murray? Are you trusting him at this 25%-ish ownership, or are you trying to move away?
I think the ownership is fine because he is still pretty cheap. He's a really good producer when he's on the floor. The only concern I have with Murray, and it's for the Spurs in general, is that this is the healthiest that they've been in the bubble now. You saw the minutes really come down last game where Murray had played 34 minutes the game before, got around 30 last game. Same goes for Derek White. Now you have Marco Bellinelli probable as well. So whereas at the beginning of this, you had Mills out and then Bellinelli got hurt. Now you have Mills back. You have Bellinelli back. You still have Keldon Johnson. You still have Lonnie Walker. You have a lot of bodies, especially for the backcourt and the wings here. The front court obviously still thin without Aldridge and without Trey Lyles, but that's not really affecting these guys. So I think that there is at least some risk that you're getting that 30 to 31 minutes from Murray, even without foul trouble, compared to like the 34 that you were getting in the second game. But he's still cheap enough and still productive enough that that's not going to cause me to completely get away from him.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. And, against Denver, it does seem like he's been able to tap into a little more rebounding, a little more assists, maybe because that defense being better, drawing some guys in his way. So, I don't know. I feel like Murray's one of those guys where if ever I'm heavy on him, it goes terribly. If ever I'm light on him relative to the field, it does go well. So I'm light on him today. So use that direction as you need to. Derek White, DeMar DeRozan, any of these guys jumping out for you, I guess, as pivots to Murray or in addition to him?
Not really. I think White's priced up a little more than I would like. He just suffers usage-wise playing alongside Murray and alongside DeRozan, and then whenever Gay's on the floor, that's another higher usage guy. DeRozan himself is fine, should play 33, 34 minutes. He's been pretty disappointing so far, but the opportunity is still there and the ownership should be lower. The problem is just that I can't really get to him over guys like LeVert, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. There's so many guys in that price range that I like a little bit more.
Yeah, DeRozan, I would worry about people chasing that box score. They see him going against Philly and putting up big numbers, and maybe it's not that scenario. I think DeRozan's just been a little reluctant to shoot, though. He did come out more aggressive in that last game. He did put up a bunch of shots in the first quarter, which has really been the thing he hasn't done in the other games in the bubble. So I don't know. DeRozan's always hard to hit, but I agree. Like, there's just better guys at that price point, and I would not want to chase the rising price for DeMar DeRozan. One guy who I'll continue to chase, though, is Jakob Poeltl. $5K on DraftKings today. A nice price for him. I don't think as much of an interest on FanDuel for me with Poeltl, but I do like him on DraftKings, and I worry. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong with my process that I keep getting Jakob Poeltl, and he keeps letting me down. But the more that he lets me down, the more I want to go back there, because now he's going to be about 10% owned. The value's still there. Theoretically has to play good minutes because Drew Eubanks is not going to do much against Nikola Jokic at all, as we saw with him and Embiid. I mean, he really didn't add much of resistance to Embiid there. I don't want to be over the field on Poeltl as much as I am, Adam, but I am. How are you with Jakob Poeltl? Are you getting there or not?
Yeah, I still think he's a good value. The price tag's cheap enough. And like I said before, the one spot where the Spurs are still thin is at center, and against a front court of Nikola Jokic and Mason Plumlee, you shouldn't have to be too concerned about Rudy Gay stealing center minutes from Poeltl. It's more likely that Poeltl plays as much as he can, barring foul trouble, and then Eubanks backs him up. So I think that they should play him a lot. He needs to be out there for defensive reasons. There is some foul risk, obviously, going against two high usage centers, particularly Jokic. The biggest problem I have with Poeltl is that Jared Allen's just a better per minute guy, and they're the same price. But I still think he's a good value, and I'll have less of him than Allen, but I'll still be getting to him.
Do you feel like there's value in just not getting Poeltl and going to the higher price guys? Because I feel like Poeltl's been such an obvious value to me, and maybe people have been burned enough that they don't go there. But it just worries me that I'm going to be competing against a litany of lineups who have just Allen and Poeltl filling up the center and utility spot on DraftKings. And I mean, at that point, it does seem like maybe just getting different in that construction could be helpful. But do you have that feel at all, maybe, that people might just see the Allen and Poeltl value, and even though Poeltl's been bad, just take it because it's there?
Yeah, I think that's my biggest issue with Poeltl is, point per dollar projections are one thing, but you need upside. And if you're rostering Allen plus Poeltl, you're obviously not getting either of Embiid or Jokic among, all the other center options. And there's just such a legitimate, Jakob Poeltl can have a good game for his salary, get you 30 to 32 DraftKings points, and still pretty easily lose by 30 actual points to guys like Embiid and Jokic, in which case, even though it was a quote unquote good play, it's not doing anything to win you a tournament. So that would be my biggest concern, is just the opportunity cost as far as ceiling goes.
Yeah. I mean, even if you look at the ceiling numbers relative to the standard deviations and all that, you're talking about a 25-point difference between both Allen and Poeltl and Embiid. And yeah, certainly some risk there and maybe some ways to think about it. Again, Embiid going to be under 10% owned, Poeltl going to be higher than that, Allen going to be substantially higher than that. So some ways to make different builds, especially if you're hand building for a limited amount of entries today. Going to answer the questions, by the way, in the premium Slack, so have no fear. If you ask something in there and we didn't get to it, we're going to jump around and get back to your guys' stuff in the back half. And YouTube as well, keep chiming in with your questions. And if you are in the YouTube chat, make sure to check the link that EMAC, your old pal, all of our old pals, EMAC just posted in there, his Fred VanVleet little tournament there. If you play in that and you win, I shouldn't have said little pejoratively. It's a great big tournament full of lots of quality people in there. But check out the link to that contest. EMAC puts it on every day. He has to play Fred VanVleet. You don't. But he's going to offer, or I guess not he, Awesemo will offer 30 days of free Awesemo Plus if you have that Awesemo avatar and you win that tournament. So check out the link there that EMAC put in the chat and play that tournament every day, because it makes EMAC happy. And anytime EMAC's happy, it's just good for the world. It's good juju for us all. Let's see. Got some questions here about the Lakers. And I'm going to tell you, Adam, I don't have any Lakers today. And I'm just a little concerned. They've clinched their 1 seed. I don't know why you need to play LeBron and AD their full minutes load. We have them in for 35 minutes each. it freaks me out. And I think the price points too, I wasn't landing there naturally. So I just figured, why not? I'll just go away from them. They're not going to be too owned though. Much like the Sixers, they're going to be about 10% each. LeBron a little bit higher than AD, it looks like. But the price is there. People aren't landing on them. Is there a value to you? Are you getting to LeBron and Anthony Davis? Or are you maybe a little more inclined to get away given what we just saw yesterday with the Bucks, where they pulled their guys early and realized that it wasn't worth it because they don't need the game?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting spot because you have the Lakers come out and say that they're intending to play their guys through both of these games. They want to get back into the rhythm they were in before the break. They aren't happy with how they're playing. So if you take that at face value, then these guys are good. But it's also, we get lied to over and over again by NBA coaches. So, what happens if the Lakers have a really good first half and they're up by 20? Do they start shortening rotations or what do they do? So there is some risk there. I think that it's also probably accounted for in ownership, at least to some extent. The biggest thing that I run into, and you mentioned it, is that just the way this slate breaks down, there's so much upside amongst the 8K guys and the 9K guys that I don't really know how much I'm going to get to James and Davis naturally, and I'm not forcing them in. So I'm personally not downgrading them for the risk. If they get shorter rotations, then so be it. But I think just naturally, I'm not going to get to that much anyway.
Yeah, the projections, my projection, Awesemo's projection, it does seem like I didn't land on much there naturally. And and I just think it's probably not worth forcing a lot. If you want to get with field just out of fear that these guys are going to go off and you won't have any. LeBron, again, about 10%. Anthony Davis, a bit less than that. So that's where the field will be if you're really deeply afraid. I also will say, Adam, I know you're not going to agree with this one, but Dion Waiters, I think at his price point, I don't mind taking that stab at 2%. I just think he's waiting to get the run of the castle that Dion Waiters loves, so he could just chuck up all he wants. He's been shooting about 10 shots a game for the most part when he's getting minutes. And I do think if the Lakers do pull their guys early, you just see Dion do Dion Waiters things out there against a former team too. And Dion, despite his love of marijuana gummies, a bit of an angry guy and a revenge-minded guy. But Adam, I'll ask you, any Dion Waiters at all for you, given the fact that he's looked okay in the bubble, especially relative to Dion Waiters?
It sounds like we're on the same page. He's not someone I'm building lineups around, but I also don't think, you think about who, if you're really building a stars and scrubs lineup tonight and you need somebody out of the 3K price range, you think about who's down there. And you have Brad Wanamaker going across all positions. You have Brad Wanamaker, you have Enes Kanter, who I think has a higher ceiling than Wanamaker, but comes, he could play 12 minutes, who knows? And you have Waiters. And I really think Waiters' medium projection is about the same as Wanamaker's. I think that his ceiling is probably higher than Wanamaker's and the ownership is lower. So from that standpoint, I understand why you would get to some Waiters. There's also a chance Dwight Howard's questionable. If Howard sits, you could see more small lineups for the Lakers with Anthony Davis playing more at the 5. That would open more minutes for Dion Waiters as well. So there's at 3K or 3,100, he's a fine tournament play. It's a guy that could very easily play 18 minutes also.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm treating him kind of like I had Campaign yesterday, who's looked good in limited sample sizes too. And I was like, if he saves me enough money to get to the guys I want and don't have enough exposure to, I think that's where you use Dion Waiters. And I need to call him out because it wouldn't shock me if he spiked a little bit of an upside relative to Dion Waiters. And he's actually looked like good. I don't, relative to what we've seen of him, he's looked good and relative to Dion Waiters. So there's a couple of modifiers there. The Oklahoma City side, though, Adam, has some pretty good ownership on them. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander burned a lot of people the other day. He still projects pretty well, should be in the mix. Dennis Schroeder is out of the bubble, so theoretically more minutes to go around for Shai, though he did play just 33 minutes last game, so didn't see a big uptick. Theoretically, more opportunity to go around for Danilo Gallinari, for Steven Adams, and Chris Paul, of course. And Luguentz-Dort did kind of try to put it down a little bit relative to being Luguentz-Dort last game, which maybe is what hurt Shai, was that Dort was looking for a shot a little bit more than usual. But these Thunder players, Adam, how are you landing with them? Because I honestly don't love Shai. I put him in just because he's going to be owned, and I don't want to miss out on that after he busted so noteworthily last time. But I don't love the Thunder in the spot going against the Lakers, even if they are going to half-ass it. How are you landing with the Thunder?
Not really prioritizing anything there. Shai's salary did come up a little bit. I still think he's a good play because he plays so many minutes and because he should get a little bit of a usage bump without Dennis Schroeder. Same goes for Chris Paul, but there's guys at their respective price points that just look a little bit better to me. You do have one of the lowest totals on the slate with OKC as well. So yeah, they're okay, but they're not priorities. Gallinari's minutes actually really concern me. He just has been basically on pace to play 26 to 28 minutes regardless in regulation. So that's a little bit concerning. The usage, for him goes up a little bit as well, but there's just so many good plays on this slate, especially in the mid range, that it's tough for me to to prioritize those guys.
Yeah, so we're on the same page there. Guys, hit the like button for the home stretch. We're going to continue to cover everything on the slate, all the important items, and I think Denver is going to be one that maybe we should talk about a bit more, because we talked about the San Antonio side and not the Denver side. And I need to know the big question for me, Adam, on the day. Michael Porter Jr., we still don't know, at least unless this has changed within the last few minutes. I don't think it has based on my notifications. Actually, let me double check. We don't know Jamal Murray's status yet, so that seems like that's still up in the air. But the guy, I mean, and this guy could be screwed if Jamal Murray plays any minutes, but Michael Porter Jr., I was there heavy last time. Then he went off. I was also pretty close to the field when he was a terrible play as chalk. I like Porter Jr. I mean, he played 44 minutes last game. I don't foresee that happening again, but it does seem like if he's doing the things that Mike Malone wants, he's going to get the minutes. He's been lights out shooting from the floor this year, shooting 50% from the floor, 43% from deep. I mean, 42% actually from deep. I love Porter Jr. again, and he's not going to be owned again because people don't want to pay the premium after getting burned by him at cheap. But where are you with Porter Jr.? Because I still think he's a tournament play. I mean, I'm going to be double the field, it looks like right now.
I still think he is too. I had a ton of him the day that he was bad. I didn't have much of him the day he was good. So take my advice for what it's worth. But the big thing with Porter, I think, is that he's a very good scorer. He's very good offensively. His biggest limitation is his defensive abilities. But you look at the Spurs team, and they're typically going to have one guy out there who you don't really need to defend. Lonnie Walker, Keldon Johnson, Derek White's not a high usage guy. There's simply going to be somebody that you can kind of hide Porter on. So whereas last game, prior to Dennis Schroeder being ruled out, I had said that I was concerned about Porter's minutes because when they run their 3-guard lineups plus Gallinari, who is he going to defend? You don't really have those concerns here with the Spurs. Plus, he's coming off of a really good game. You would think that he gets more minutes to boost his confidence some. So I do like Porter. The salary obviously has come up, and that makes it a little bit tough. But I think Porter's still a good play in tournaments.
Yeah, I think people are going to be afraid to pay the price up, and this is one where I think the price up is still, in terms of projections, if he plays 30 minutes, I feel pretty good about him. Certainly a risk that he can lose those minutes. Certainly a risk Jeremy Grant can take a little more usage away after he played big minutes last game, or even Paul Millsap. But Porter Jr., to me, I would want to at least be with the field on after what we just saw, where a lot of people were very upset about not playing Porter Jr., and that's going to happen when he has those big days. How about Jokic for you? Because we've talked about some of the center plays. We've talked about the other high-priced guys. Josh, on his contenders video, had Jokic as his favorite play on the day. He had triple-double last time out. He's looked good. I don't know. I just have a bad feeling about Jokic. Didn't land there a bunch. I liked some of the value guys. I liked Embiid a bit more relative to ownership. But how are you with Jokic? Do you feel like the 20% on him that we have projected ownership-wise is fair?
Yeah, I think that Jokic is a really good play here because, Pirtle's okay defensively, but if you can get him in foul trouble, he's going to pretty much just have free run against Drew Eubanks and whoever else comes in behind him. So I think the upside's really high for Jokic. If Murray sits, you get more in the way of assists and usage as well.
All right, some questions in the premium Slack we'll burn through real fast before we I double check here to see if there's anything that we need to cover a little more depth, maybe Toronto or Orlando, though that one didn't rate a ton for me. So we'll circle back there. But Andre in the premium Slack asking, are you setting groups for the Boston guys on FanDuel? I'm not playing FanDuel today, so that's not an issue for me. And I didn't get a lot of Brown, Hayward, and Tatum together, and that didn't freak me out. I think if I got 2 out of the 3, I'd feel better than 3 out of the 3, but didn't occur for me naturally, so I didn't set a group. But for Andre, Adam, are you doing anything with the groups for the Boston guys on FanDuel?
No, I mean, getting 2 out of 3 is fine. My only group is my normal one where I'm not playing Tice and Cancer together. Got it.
Yeah, those guys, of course, suck minutes away from each other, and that's an issue more than usually playing guys together just because they share court time. Fantasy Wiz, here's a guy that we haven't talked about in the Orlando-Toronto game. People are actually going to be owning at a decent chunk. Fantasy Wiz is thinking about fading Vooch tonight. I didn't get a lot of Vooch, again, for the same reasons I talked about. I just think there are other center plays I'd rather key in on, and I don't really love the matchup going against Toronto either. We know Marc Gasol has been a decent stopper of quality centers in the past, and even Serge Ibaka, for whatever he does, I think had some value. And Toronto just generally, I feel like I'm not usually dying to play centers against, but Vooch is cheap enough where he can get there. Just 25% ownership seems a little lofty for me. But where are you with Vooch? Do you think he's a viable play at that much ownership going against Toronto?
It's tough for me just because of what we talked about with how many centers there are. I think Vooch by himself is fine, but you have great value in Allen, you have Embiid and Jokic, who I love both of. I think Valanciunas is a good play. So I think it'll be tough to really prioritize Vooch, especially if he's getting a lot of ownership.
Morgan in the premium Slack asking about Kyle Anderson. We talked about him earlier. No issue getting to him, but certainly not a guy to prioritize. Theoretically, he could be sort of a pivot to Brandon Clark, but not somebody who we talked about a lot in more depth earlier today in the show. But yeah, not a guy for Kyle Anderson. I think neither of us are today. Can we talk value on DK? Is a question from Colin in the premium Slack right now. We talked about some of the value guys with, I guess, Brad Wanamaker and Dion Waiters being two guys under 4K who have some use. James Ennis in this Orlando game, also a guy who's going to pick up ownership. I liked Ennis the other day or yesterday just because of him getting some minutes from Jonathan Isaac. But Ennis is a guy I like when he's going to be 5% owned. I do not like him today at 20%. I am not there at all, really. I don't think he has the ceiling to hit, even if he does get to 30 minutes, which he hasn't gotten to yet. I mean, is there anything else value-wise for you, Adam, or is James Ennis, does that round out your interest in the sub 4K range?
I mean, you can go to Waiters, who we talked about. I think Enes Kanter is a good tournament play. I always think Enes Kanter at 3,500 is a good tournament play. There's not a lot of really cheap value to like here, but there's just not a lot of upside amongst those guys. So I'd rather just get out of that price range entirely.
Yeah, I agree. And Ennis at 20%, that's going to be a lot of lineups out there that just have a dude who puts up 25 fantasy points max. And, right. I think that's a good spot to get away from, I would think, for Ennis. So I would not be in on Ennis. And I agree too. Like, I don't think any of these value guys today are worth more than 5%, really. So Ennis at 4 times that, I think, is in particular one dude to get away from. No other questions in the Slack right now. So real fast, let's talk about Toronto and Orlando. Toronto here, Fred VanVleet's been going off. All these guys, for the most part, look fine, but didn't land on much Toronto besides VanVleet. And the Orlando side we've mostly talked about, though. I guess Evan Fournier is also in the mix. It's being decently owned. But let's talk the Toronto side first. Anybody popping up for you at all? Because projection-wise, I imagine you may not get a lot of these guys.
Yeah, no, not really. I think this is, in general, one of the least appealing games. On one hand, or the biggest reason to like Toronto would just be that Nick Nurse is insane and plays these guys huge minutes. There's absolutely no reason for Toronto to be playing these guys big minutes now unless they just want to. So that's, I guess, a little bit concerning, but we've never really seen Nick Nurse dial it back. So I think the minutes are really good. It's just that there's so many mid-range plays that I like better than Toronto.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And you're not getting any discount at all. Like, VanVleet's been amazing and he looks good, but he's at almost 8K. I don't see there being much value going there. And Evan Fournier for you, Adam, any interest at all? Because he's going to be 20% owned, and Fournier capable of spiking that upside, especially now that his minutes have been mostly shifted away from Markelle Fultz. That does tend to help him out a bit. But did you get Fournier relative to the field at 20%? Yeah,
I think Fournier will be my highest owned guy from the game. It doesn't make me feel very good because it's Evan Fournier, but there's, just kind of like we talked about, there's limited value on this slate, especially at the bottom end. And so then if you're going to a build where you're not quite as stars and scrubby, you start needing 5K guys, and about 32 minutes from Fournier seems relatively appealing.
Yeah, Fournier can definitely spike that upside, but in a matchup with some rangy Toronto wings, I worry a little bit about him getting what's there, but never really a problem. I mean, I had a lot of Fournier yesterday and it didn't quite work out. He and Bogdan were my undoing in those lineups, but at that price point, that's the reason you go to Fournier, is he can spike that upside, but as long as you know that he can kill you, you'll hopefully be okay going in there. Reading through the rest of the chat here. So if you have your questions in the premium Slack in particular, make sure to get them in now and hit that like button for the home stretch, guys. Our last 10 minutes. And I feel like we've covered pretty much all the core players on the slate, but if there are any we haven't hit on, ask it in the chat. Jamie asking, how do these guys know ownership? We do ownership projections at Awesemo. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you are a member of Awesemo Plus, or at least try it out if you can. And today, actually, the ownership projections are free. They are one of our premium features that's free on the site. So actually, I'll drop the link in the chat for you, and it should be able to be accessed, assuming this page works too. But check out the link there that I just put in, and you can see our ownership projections for free. But it's based off of a bunch of things that go into an algorithm and determine what people are expected to play. So it's not a perfect science, but about as good as you will find across the industry, of course, with that Awesemo Plus membership. Let's see. I think we got some exciting either ors to hit on. Actually, here's a question from Daniel Crossan about Steven Adams. Adams at that price point of Pirtle and Jarrett Allen, so maybe there's some tournament logic in going to him. That said, I did not see Adams pop up for me at all. I don't think he looks like a great projected play for me, and I guess he's passable according to Awesemo. Where are you with Adams? Does he seem worth anything to you? I know we've beaten a drum here with the centers, but I think for the reasons we talked about, I don't see getting to Adams over the other guys, but I get it for a tournament.
Yeah, I don't have the ownership in front of me right now, but I think he's very similar to Pirtle as far as he should play around 30 minutes. You're basically hoping he doubles. He's not a high usage guy, but he'll rebound and get putbacks. So I think that if either of them are significantly higher owned than the other, I would prefer going to the lower owned one.
Yeah, I think that seems fair. And Steven Adams will be under 10% owned, it looks like. So again, some tournament value in there. But if you want to get an under 10% owned guy, and try to pay up for Joel Embiid would be my thought. But I get it. One
thing I will point out, I'm running my crunches right now. It looks like I'm getting, or not looks like, I'm getting a ton of Chris Paul on FanDuel. I'm getting a ton of Michael Porter Jr. on FanDuel. So they both look better there than on DraftKings.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, a little better prices on FanDuel for both guys. So make sure to keep your eyes peeled relative to the sites, because that's an important part to consider. Sometimes people sleep on guys because they're primarily DraftKings players, and the rates and the whole approach can change with FanDuel. And of course, the SuperDraft as well, where you should be getting in if you got your lineups done early. This has been a low news day so far. Still no Jamal Murray news. The Wizards will be starting Ish Smith alongside Troy Brown, Isaac Bonga, Rui Hachimura, and Thomas Bryant. So they are not going back to Shabazz Napier for whatever that's worth. And actually, Adam, I guess is a question for you. Did you get any Ish? Because Ish intrigues me at his price point, but I certainly don't view him as being worth much more than the 13% ownership.
Not sure if I got there. I'm still trying to figure stuff out, but I had him as pretty much a neutral play.
All right, and checking all the Slacks, all the chats, all the questions here to see if there's anything important that I missed. The Maharishi asking Fournier or Troy Brown for a DK GPP. That would be Troy Brown for me. Do you have a lean, Adam?
Depends on how big the ownership gap is. I prefer Fournier, but if you're getting like 2-1 or something, then Troy Brown.
Yeah, right now it looks like we have Fournier projected for 20%, Troy Brown for 23%. So close enough. And yeah, I think I'd still go Troy Brown. Thoughts on the Orlando guard situation? I'm not sure specifically what you're referring to, but again, Fournier is the one who pops up the most there. Fultz not getting enough minutes for me to go there. I love Fultz too, so it kind of bums me out. He hasn't quite gotten there. DJ Augustine has been a total non-factor for me as well. And Adam, you didn't get any of the point guards for Orlando, did you?
I don't think I will. I have both. I have Fultz and Augustine actually both in for 26 minutes, thinking maybe they get a little bit more run with Carter Williams out. But it's still just not enough for me to get too much of them on the slate.
Liam asking for thoughts on Brad Wanamaker. We talked about him a bit earlier at some more depth, but nice minimum price play in terms of being a minimum price play, but unlikely to spike the upside for tournaments was the consensus that Adam and I reached. So, not a priority play by any stretch, but if you get on him or if you just have a lineup you love and there's a need for a 3K guy, I get putting him in there. And maybe the back-to-back also gives him a little bit of a bump too, because if things go weird there. But yeah, not a priority play by any stretch. Let's see what else is going on here. Premium Slack, nothing good yet. 5 minutes left to lock, give or take, guys. So start getting those lineups in if you haven't yet. And make sure to keep your eyes peeled for news, because we still do not have news on Denver. And if Jamal Murray comes in, that could change some things. But Jazz lineup also just came out. Same thing as usual. Conley, Mitchell, Ingles, O'Neal, Gobert. So nothing unsurprising there. Will Clark get usage is a question from Gage Macri. I think there's a risk he gets less usage than usual, and I bumped his rate down a little bit. But Adam, where did you land on your final crunches here for your exposure to Brandon Clark?
Still don't know about exposure, still doing the crunches, but I think the usage does go down, the rebounding rate does go down, but he's still averaged about 0.9 DraftKings points per minute when he's been on the floor with Valanciunas. So it's still a really good value.
And Adam is, if you can watch him sweat here during the last 5 minutes, I'll try to let him get some space here to finish his crunches, because Adam's probably playing more money than most of you guys in the chat combined, and we need to make sure the man has some runway to get his stuff in there. Aaron Hines asking about a Clarkson revenge bounce back. I did get some Jordan Clarkson today just because, he's been down a couple times, but the minutes have been there. The role has been there for him. So I don't mind it. I think for him, I would put him pretty close to that Ish Smith tier. And actually ownership wise, it looks like these guys are going to be pretty close. Both guys at a price point that I don't mind not trying to get a ton of them together, because I find it unlikely both guys spike the upside in the way you'd want. Did you get any Clarkson at all?
I don't think so.
Okay. So no Clarkson for Adam. So keep that in mind. But I don't know about the revenge bounce back. I think that's not, it's a bit of an odd stretch to make there, but sure. I like the concept of pairing together two narratives. LeBron, or both to win? Matthew is asking. Matthew, we talked about this earlier in the show. I think neither of us too bullish on the concept of going above the field on LeBron or AD. Both guys going to be pretty appropriately owned given the fact that there's just some risk playing the Lakers today. They're a 1 seed. They're on a back-to-back. There are some ways here that gets weird, even though they've said they intend to play these guys their minutes. Really no reason to play LeBron and Anthony Davis 35 minutes each on a back-to-back. So there's going to be some risk there, and I would personally be inclined to get away from it, or at least not get too heavy above the field on it. Let's see. Oh, Nathan suggesting playing Royce O'Neal over Brandon Clark. I think you can make an argument not to play Brandon Clark. I don't think the argument is to play Royce O'Neal. But Adam, did you get any Royce O'Neal in your final exposures here?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. How many guys do you have, or how many minutes do you guys have Clark in for today? Let me see. I'll double check that for you. Looks like, and I pull Awesemo's minutes projections as well for my own projections. So I'm using the same one. So have no fear. There's no bait and switch here, but Awesemo has Brandon Clark at 28 minutes projected today. So maybe you can get a little higher there, but at 28 minutes, he should pop up more than enough if you're crunching on Fantasy Cruncher or whatever other optimizers you want to use out there. Let's see. Looking for more questions. Bonga will never pay off. I would say that's probably very true. Definitely prefer Troy Brown to Isaac Bonga for your Wizards exposures today. 3 minutes left, guys. Start getting those lineups in. No Temple with LeVert back. Yeah, that's also correct. Best 8K and up player on DK to break the slate. I said this take earlier. To me, it's Ben Simmons. I think he's the one who just doesn't have the ownership on him, and I think he should in this matchup against the Wizards. Adam, do you have any lean here on an 8K or above guy who might be a potential slate breaker?
Embiid,
yeah. Embiid also under 10% owned too. So get some Sixers would be, I think, my suggestion here. Kansas resident here. Is that a Kansas rowing shirt? Yes, it is. I dated a girl who was on the rowing team a couple of years ago, and that's why I have this shirt. So I wear it. Great sentimental value in my life and my heart, and great. And I love Kansas too. One of the loveliest people I've ever known in my life was that girl. Let's not dig any deeper than why I dated a girl who went to Kansas. I think that's the main question there. Thoughts on Paul Millsap? He projects well for me. I'd much rather have Porter Jr. Adam, did you get any Millsap?
Yeah, I think Millsap's a pretty solid play. The minutes have been there since he's not really splitting time with Jeremy Grant anymore.
There you go. Rock chalk from Lawrence. Yeah, I think certainly, the value to Millsap to me would be if people do flock to Porter Jr. again, going to Millsap, certainly a way that gets different though. Right now, it looks like Millsap is going to be higher owned than Michael Porter Jr. So take that for what it's worth. I still think MPJ is the play there, as long as you're willing to accept the fact that he might bomb out and completely ruin you. Let's see. 1 minute left to lock, guys. Get it in if you haven't got it in yet, because now is the time for your lineups to get in. That's just how that goes. Reading through all the chats. Nothing else good. Hayward or Brown for Celtics forwards. For me, that would be, for me, I think that would still be Brown, but I think we're talking FanDuel here. But Adam, do you have a lean, Hayward or Brown for FanDuel?
I prefer Brown.
Okay. Let's see. Thoughts on the Spurs, White or Murray or DeRozan? I think we sort of agreed earlier that we favored DeJounte Murray. He's going to be the chalk play, though, so I don't hate you going to DeRozan, but at DeRozan's price tag, as Adam mentioned earlier, there are some guys you can go to, probably have a little more upside. DeRozan certainly pressed up for that outlier effort he had last time on going against Philly, and his usage really hasn't been that high, I think, for me to trust that. J-Val is starting. Yep, J-Val's starting. All right, we're locked, guys. So we got it in. Thank God. All of our you got everything in okay, Adam? You're safe?
Yeah, I don't really like my lineups, but I got them in.
All right. So Adam's going to massage some lineups. Any plugs you want to hit on? You've done enough shows for today, I presume, but anything you want to plug?
This is my last one for the day.
Yeah, it's time for Adam and I to hit some IPAs early. I think it's the move. We appreciate all you guys watching. Use that promo code NHL is back. Again, really, I think this is one thing, and I love Jake, obviously. I'm sure you guys could pick it up when watching the MLB Live Before Lock shows, but our NHL product is just one thing we honestly haven't gotten enough love for, and I think it's something that we need to shine more of a light on, and Jake does a fantastic job there. The NHL bubble is just going to be neglected because of all the other sports going on. So use that promo code NHL is back at awesemo.com/join. Gives you 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus's NHL package. And it'll give you a lot of opportunity to make some money there. And Jake is a top player in the world at NHL. His guy Slim Cliffy's on there with him, or Nolan, whoever's rotating in. They do a great job also chiming in, giving some more support to Jake. So use that promo code NHL is back at awesemo.com/join. And of course, SuperDraft wouldn't be a show without them. So we appreciate all the folks over at SuperDraft, and you should be playing over there every single day. They've had a lot of overlay. It's a new site, and they also have some deposit bonuses for you to get if you use the promo code Awesemo10. It's AWESEMO10. Gets you $10 free with a deposit of $10 or more, and $20 free if you deposit more than $100. So play over there, support them, support yourself and your bankroll more than anything. And make sure you're playing at SuperDraft. It's superdraft.io, or by downloading SuperDraft in the App Store, because it's SuperDraft. There are no limits, more winning. And just subscribe, hit the notification bell, because PGA Live Before Lock comes up later. MLB Live Before Lock comes up later. There is content coming from this channel all day long. So watch it all, enjoy, and have a great night or day or whatever. Good luck.